it is. 52% of the sample, they went to school in Canada, most of them having received a bachelor's degree from a Canadian university. And very interestingly, nearly a third of these respondents indicate that they will send their children to a school in Canada or to a Canadian school in Hong Kong. Clearly, these has all kinds of implications for education policy, for student recruitment, and for the expansion of Canadian schools, not only in Canada, but also in Asia. You may know that the business of creating Canadian schools that deliver Canadian curriculum is a massively growing endeavor around the world, but particularly in Asia. And to date, we already have over 70 schools delivering Canadian curriculum throughout Asia. The population of students in Asia studying Canadian curriculum is larger than, twice as large as the entire student population in PEI, for example. Family ties, of course, are very extensive, so we're not talking about simply a severing of ties on the part of the foreign-born Canadians who have gone back to Hong Kong, but we are referring to people who continue to have attachments principally through their relatives and particularly immediate family in this country. Many of the Canadians in Hong Kong do plan to return to this country, apparently within 10 years. Because the average age of our sample was about 45, this would put them roughly in the mid-50s when they come back. Clearly, this has implications for taxation, has implications for healthcare, the healthcare system more generally, for Social Security, for the real estate market. I mean, those of you who follow the Vancouver real estate market will understand the significant impact that waves of immigration have on property prices here. And I don't think that our policymakers and Canadians in general have thought sufficiently deeply about the role that overseas Canadians play in domestic policy. Because the vast majority of Canadians in Hong Kong cited as their last place of residence Ontario or British Columbia, we can expect that the largest impact of any return flow will be on these two provinces. When it comes to attachment and sort of emotional ties, much more ambiguous findings. Only 46% of Canadians in Hong Kong consider Canada home all the time or sometimes. They do, however, have fairly extensive contact with the Canadian consulate in Hong Kong, with the majority of them having contacted the consulate sometime within a year, and not just for passport purposes. Of course, they maintain visits because of family and other reasons, and so there are a variety of attachments that Canadians in Hong Kong have to this country despite overseas residence. However, not the economic ties appear to be less important in the range of attachments that we have, that we observe in the Canadian population in Hong Kong. You see only 25% retain a professional practice license. That's actually a fairly substantial number, which of course gives them an option to return to practice their profession in this country. Only 10%, though, of respondents report doing business with Canadian clients. And this, of course, speaks to the issue that Professor Walton Roberts has talked about for India, the relatively scant trade and investment connections that are generated by this population of Canadians in Hong Kong. We were surprised to see that nearly 20% of the respondents do continue to pay taxes in Canada. I think this somewhat challenges the notion that many Canadians have of the overseas population not really kind of sponging off Canadian society and not contributing fiscally to the Canadian treasury. What are the views of Canadians abroad and Canadians in this country on government policies related to the issue of the Canadian diaspora? We've done surveys not only of Hong Kong Canadians in Hong Kong, but also national opinion polls of Canadians in this country to gauge their views on a variety of issues that affect expatriate Canadians. On dual citizenship, you see a very strong percentage support the idea of dual citizenship. You see also that a very strong percentage, both in Hong Kong as well as across this country, believe that the right of citizenship should be maintained even for the children of Canadians born overseas. This is, of course, the bill that was passed last year. And also a very strong percentage of Canadians, both abroad and in this country, support the idea that citizens overseas should have the same voting rights as citizens living within the borders. You may be aware that if you live overseas for a period of more than 5 years, you lose the ability to vote. You can regain it by coming back, but you do not have the ability to vote if you've lived abroad for more than 5 years. And most Canadians disagree with this policy. Now, consular services often tends to dominate the discussion on Canadians abroad. I don't have time to go into great detail. Let me just say that part of our research was to take some attention away from what we felt was a distraction in coming to a deeper understanding of the Canadian population overseas. But having said that, let me point out that the consular problem is grossly exaggerated. The data tells us quite clearly that consular revenues exceed expenditures. Services are offered on a cost recovery basis, and that while consular issues have to be watched and managed very carefully, they should not be an unnecessary distraction for policy on Canadians abroad. Range of economic implications. I'm quickly running out of time, so I'll leave you to read that, and maybe we can have a discussion later. There is a workshop this afternoon, but there are a variety of economic implications that we think have only begun to be thought about and to be tapped. And let me conclude by saying that there are a variety of policies that we think should be considered fundamentally for the government of Canada and the provincial governments to treat Canadians abroad, first of all, as an asset. Secondly, to look at them holistically, if you will, and to develop some way of coordinating policy across the various departments so that it isn't simply a consular issue or a tax issue or a health issue. And there are a number of best practices from around the world that can be looked at. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.